This one's a Kawasaki Klr650. It's a dual sport motorcycle, and it was really black. The guy told me that that's the one thing it didn't do. It was the oil. Still have some left over right here, and I actually have a picture of it as well, but that oil is really black, so that's not good. So the reason this engine was taken out of the frame is for two reasons. One is to redo this whole bike because it was painted over black. It was in really rough shape. It needs a lot of work done to it. Those fork seals are blown. The wiring harness is messed up. The exhaust right here moves. A lot of the parts are painted black, like I said. So the first thing I'm doing is redoing this frame, and all I'm doing to it is taking off the original frame paint, and also it was painted over black, so I couldn't really restore the original color. So what I did is just use these cookies right here, took all the paint off by hand. I still got some work to do. You can see next to the VIN number, I got to work around that. Got some work to do back there. And yeah, I'm just trying to go for that gritty look, just like steel. I think it's gonna look good with that engine in there. It's gonna give it like a clean look. It's gonna be a little different, but I'm willing to take that risk. The last thing I'm gonna do to this is also a clear coat, so it protects it from rust. And that's gonna be mainly it for the frame. I'm gonna work on these triple clamps, get those cleaned up as well, get that black paint off. Moving on to the motor here, the reason I took this out in the first place was also because it had a smoking problem. So that brings me to two things. That's the valve seals and the piston rings. So just to be on the safe side, I'm actually going to do both. And I'm going to inspect that cylinder while I'm in there, inspect that piston, make sure that crank's good. Either way though, this motor did run, and it ran pretty good. It didn't rev out that great. We're gonna go through the revving out problem. So it did rev out a little bit once in a while, but sometimes it would bog if you did it too quickly. So that brings me to two things here, and that's going to be the valve clearances and the carburetor. So I'm going to check these, make sure they're in spec once I put this head back on, because like I said, I got to replace the rings and I got to replace the valve seals. And then I'm going to clean this carb out real good. You can see this is actually an OEM carb. It says Japan right there, and it says Keen right behind that idle screw. So that could be one of the problems for it revving out, because it could have a clogged idle jet or a clogged main jet, and that should be good for the revving out problem. I know that smoke actually causes an engine to be hard to rev out as well. So if you have blue smoke, that means you have oil. If you have white smoke, it's coolant. I know it's not coolant because I checked the plug after. There's no water on there or anything like that. And yes, this is water cooled. It looks like it could be air cooled, but it's got water pump right there. And actually the radiator was just replaced from the previous owner. And you can see it's in great shape. I'm pretty sure it's a Tusk radiator. So these are like a lot of money right there. One thing I have to get for the radiator is a radiator fan, and then that'll be good. Got the new oil filter for it. And I actually just cleaned up this air box here. This was really dirty. And I got the air filter for it. Right here, it's a twin air filter. Got to clean it up a little, but I mean, it's practically brand new. Clean up that wheel, get the paint off, and the swing arm as well. And then the subframe I got to work on too. It's going to take some time. Forks, I got to do the fork seals and the fork bushings, and then dust seals as well. Then I got to take all the paint off these parts. It's going to take a bit of time. So everything that I know of works in the wire harness, except for the lights and the blinkers. I never tested that. But let's see if I can find how messed up the rear. Let's see if we could find that. this part? No, that's a charger. Yeah, so right here, this is just jacked up. They got a fuse going to this weird connection that they made. Like, it just does not make sense. So I'm gonna have to get the diagram and clean this all up and fix it. So yeah, it just does not look pretty there. But yeah, there's no problems with like spark or anything. So that's good. I'll definitely go over that real good when I have it reinstalled. But she's all there. She's got the headlights. The only thing that we're missing is plastics, that fan, a few other things here and there like the blinkers. That's all little stuff, but it's gonna add up for sure. This rectifier, I gotta test that, make sure that works and the battery's charging. The tach's in good shape as well. And actually the temp sensor does work, so that's good. All the gauges work there. So really the last thing we're gonna do is tear apart that head and the cylinder. We're also gonna test this tensioner, make sure it works. And we'll do that by what the manual says to do to test this, because some processes could be different. And yeah, I mean, it looked like it had tension because you could see it's loose now, but before when I checked it, there was tension on these cams here. And then this is the OEM tensioner, so it's gonna work off of oil pressure instead of just like a screw. So the spring's in from oil pressure. Valve cover's in really good shape. All right, so the top end is apart now. We're gonna go over all the stuff that I saw, some problems, and what I have to do. So this is the compression ring, or one of them at least. This was the top one. And you can see there's another one right there, and then you got the oil ring. And as you're looking at that, you could probably see that damage right there in the piston. Now, I'm not sure what it was from. Could be from a ring snapping off. It could be from metal getting in or something like that. I mean, it just looks pretty bad. And that's not even the worst of it. So I had this bike running decent, and I was pretty confident that I wouldn't have to replace any parts. But after looking at this damage right here, I was kind of concerned that there was going to be more somewhere. Before we move on to the head and cylinder, I take the starter off as well, which you have to take this cover off, and then you have to take those two gears off, which just slide right out, and then these two bolts for the starter, and then you're good to go. That's the starter right there. It's in good shape. And then you got to take off these oil lines as well. So this is the head right here. It's in actually really good shape. After looking at it, I was kind of questioning if it got replaced at one point or not, because like the journals are in really good shape and it looks brand new, to be honest. I mean, for this bike being a 2005, most of the parts would get wear over time. So anyway, you can see the intake, where the intake valves go, that looks very clean, which is good, but that doesn't tell you much, because if your valve seals are still leaking, they're not gonna go back up in that intake valve slot, or where that seat is. They're gonna go right out the exhaust. So you can see the difference in the carbon and oil in the exhaust port, because that's where it burns, that's where it goes. It just travels to the exhaust port. And now that I'm getting a closer look, you can see all these scratches. So there's definitely metal or some type of failure in here. Could be so many different things. But yeah, there's definitely metal in there at one point. A lot of scratches. But I still think that head is new. Not 100% sure. One last thing that I have to do is hope and pray that this thread works right here. So this, there's like a crown nut. This is not a good example, because this is the one I have to cut. But the crown nuts look like this, and all of the nuts that are crown nuts on this top end, you literally have to take off with an open end wrench. You can't get a socket on there because the crown is too big, so it won't let you fit a socket over that. And then the problem after that is there's no way to fit a socket in where all these crown nuts were. So I had to use an open end, and this ended up stripping very bad. And I was left with one option, and that was just to cut it with like a Dremel and a metal disc. And it worked, but it sadly chewed away the threads right there and made it a little bit difficult to come off. But but that's going to be the least of the problem. Moving on to the cylinder, what you would probably expect is where the damage is. So we're going to get a look in there. Let me get a light real quick. Let's see if I have one over here. Where's this one? Alright, so you can see that cylinder's in good shape too. I mean, the outside of it at least. Most of these get really messed up and whatever, and you can see I honed this out to try to fix that problem right there. That's going to be the problem. This little divot. I'll try to put it this way, and then if you look at it like from this angle, hopefully that you get a better idea what I was running into. So when you put your finger in there, you could feel a good amount of dip in that cylinder, and that must be where the ring came off or metal or whatever. I've never seen a scoring that was side to side. Usually they're up and down, but yeah, it's definitely weird, and it's probably caused from the metal. So a couple things I tried to do is hone it, like I said. But once you put oil in there and you start honing it, you could see the oil won't fill up that divot. So that's when you know, like, all right, this is bad. Another thing I did is I put the ring in there and I tested the ring gap. And this is in range here. This is 0.48 millimeters. So that's good. And that was the ring gap at the top of the cylinder here. So up here in this not worn out area, it was perfect. Once I tested it right on this point here, it was 0.7 millimeters, so 0.70 instead of 0.48. So I looked up the ring gap specs, and that was off by a good amount. So if I tried to hone this or get it machined 0.20 millimeters off, then I would be losing compression, probably get blow by, and I would just be screwed. So with that little tiny divot, what it's gonna do is cause blow by, it's gonna cause lack of power, oil to sneak by, and it's gonna burn oil, because when the engine gets hot, the oil is gonna get thinner and it's gonna sneak by there, and it's not gonna hold the compression, it's gonna run like crap. And that could explain the problem of revving out when it's not revving out fully, because it could be down on power, which is from that little divot. You may not think, but that little divot will cause big problems. So what I did is I bought a new, or not new, but a used cylinder on eBay. It was in really good shape. No divots or scores like this one. So I'm gonna hope and pray that one works better than this one. I know that it runs, so that's a good thing, but really when I took this thing apart, I was like so confident that I wouldn't have to replace any big parts like this. But now that I think about it, all these little problems are starting to add up. So that oil problem could just be from that divot and not the oil rings and valve seals. Or who knows, maybe I do the valve seals and the rings and it's perfect. So I'd rather just get it right the first time, do everything right, get the new cylinder, get the new valve seals and rings, and this thing should be perfect. I'm not going to take that chance with that cylinder right there. It definitely does not look as bad on camera, but I mean, it's horrible. And I honed this like for a super long time, so yeah. Yep. So it's not going to be easy to see, but you get what I'm saying. So even if I got new rings for it, the difference from this spot right here and that divot is gonna stay the same. It's always gonna be 0.20 millimeters off. So like I said, I can't hone it anymore. The only options I have are pretty expensive. So I got that cylinder for a good deal, and that should save me money on, instead of boring it out and machining the cylinder, all that crap. It's gonna save me more money than doing it that way, because the cylinder I got was only like maybe 150 bucks, which is a really good price for a cylinder. And I'm pretty confident that the new cylinder will work. I mean, it looked great in the pictures, but you never really know until you get it in your hands. But yeah, I mean, honestly, after doing all this stuff, the valve seals, the piston rings, really I think we're gonna be good. So it's pretty hard to find parts for this thing, I'm not gonna lie. You can't even find this piston on regular websites. For example, eBay or Amazon. You can't really find them unless they're big bores, or like wicked expensive. So the big bore pistons alone were like 300 bucks, and then you got to get it machined, which is a pain in the ass. So I had to get the rings OEM because you can't find the rings unless they're like a crazy stupid amount. And then the piston alone was like, I think 150 to like 200 bucks, and it came with the rings too, but that was like aftermarket kits. And honestly, on the website like Motorsport or any of those part websites, they were like mostly out of stock for them. Like they didn't have them anymore, so you'd have to just wait. So the last couple things I'm working on is these tires. So this one looked like that one, but 100 times worse. Like, see how this paint is only in some spots? Paint was completely covered on that tire. Like, it was crazy. So what I did to that is wire brush, steel wool, acetone, brake clean, and it just comes right off. So this one I gotta work on. I'm gonna try to clean up this swing arm with something, maybe the same substance that I used for that. And this was the end result for that steel wool acetone method. Came out really good, and I didn't even polish it yet. So going from a black tire to something like this is definitely a big step up. It takes so much time, but for me it's worth it. I hate the look of black tires. I don't know why people do it, either because it's stolen or because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. So this subframe I still gotta clean up, and I want to go for this look on the subframe. This frame is pretty much done. I mean, there's some little spots here and there. Let's see if I could find any, like right there, right there. So this is almost ready for the clear coat. I'm gonna touch up those final spots with the wire brush and then sand it over to make it glossy. So I'm gonna wet sand it, and then after that I'll do the clear coat, and this thing should come out pretty good. And then, like I said before, I'm gonna work on these triple clamps. Pretty much everything that's black is gonna be looking like this, and that's the look I'm going for. So hopefully that fixes the bad look of this thing, because this thing looked like crap before. I mean, right here is a pretty good example of what I want, and I didn't even sand over this part yet, so it's still a little rough, but I want it to be shiny like that. And once I clear it, I hope that it protects it against rust. I think it will, but I like the look of it. I mean, it's different. It looks like the newer aluminum frames. You know how those are on race bikes? They're just pretty much bare like this, but aluminum. And you know, there's so much shit on it, so it'll definitely come out to a better result. But I mean, that's just like a rough kind of look of what it's gonna look like. So just picture this little frame here with that engine. I think it's gonna look good. All those parts are gonna be clean, so that's gonna make a big difference. This engine's gonna be clean. I don't think you guys got to look at the cams yet, but these are the cams here. That's just oil, but nothing like major here. This is all really good shape here. Got the exhaust cam right there. Let's see if we get a look at these journals here. Yeah, not bad, not bad. I mean, I've seen so much worse. So much worse. All right, I'm gonna cut this one here. Next video should be when this thing's in the frame, coming together, or maybe even a startup video. Maybe something like fork seals. I gotta do those. I haven't really made too many videos on fork seals, but yeah, I gotta do the fork seals, all the dumb body work that I hate doing. So yeah, it's gonna be it. If you guys have any video requests, let me know. I definitely want to keep uploading. And yeah, maybe something like a top end assembly on a customer service or something different, like body work. If you guys want to see me do some body work, like how I get that to be completely clean from something like that, or even worse, or something like maybe a wire harness video, because this wire harness is really jacked up. Whatever you guys think, let me know. And that's gonna be it.